So welcome back. Assume you are already able to create a foreign keys. Now that means you are able to create a table, define the primary key, define the foreign keys already. 95% of the job is done. So for the rest part of the introductions or the codes I want to introduce to you are much more straightforward. Another three constraints that we can add to the table are not null, unique, as well as check. So let's take a look at this. For the not null constraint, you already see this code in the examples we provide for the, I think it's student table already. So you can see that the non-null constraint ensures that the column has a value and the value is not a null value, which is basically you put a star sign on the attributes that you create. A space or a numerical zero is actually not a null value. That means there are some values. A null value is a null value. So you can define not null constraint at the column level only, which means that when you try to put a non-null constraint on any attribute, you need to know when you try to define this attribute. So column level only. And therefore, you will be able to create a non-null by giving the attribute name, data type, size, and then add the reserve of a constraint, and then add the name of the constraint, put not null in back of it, indicating that this attribute cannot be null. That's how we are able to create a non-null constraint. For the unique constraint, indicating that requires every value in a column or a set of columns be unique, so they cannot repeat to each other. And therefore, you are able to define unique constraint at both column level as well as table level. At the column level, the constraint is defined by this way. By giving the name, data type, size, constraint name, and then basically just use the reserved word unique, UNIQUE, indicating that this is going to be a unique attribute. You can, of course, add that in the table level by adding the constraint name, unique, and then you put a parenthesis indicating that which attribute of this table that you want to add the unique constraint. So this is the only difference between the table level as well as the column level, and it is the same for most of the constraint addition. Finally, check constraint is actually can set up some check criteria, basically something similar to an if statement, indicating that they have to stay in this range of the values, otherwise it is wrong. So we can see that the check constraint defines a condition that every row must satisfy. You can define that at the column level as well as at the table level. If you try to define that at the column level, you do the same thing by giving the name. Now the code is a little bit more interesting. Check, CHECK, indicating the reserved word for check constraint. You can put a parenthesis. Whatever things that you have learned in CS1, CS2 data structure, the if statement can be put over here. So here you can see that this example provides the department ID has to be greater or equal to 10, and it has to be less or equal to 99. So basically, it says that this value has to be a 2-digit integer value. And that is what this constraint tries to say. And when you trying to put that same piece of code in the table level, it will be something very similar. And therefore, you can see that we have covered all of the 5 different constraints that we want to discuss. To create a table, now final summarize about table creation. You need to write down create table and then provide a table name, open, close parenthesis, and put a semicolon after that. And of course, now when you are looking at this piece of code, you know it is very straightforward. As long as you have the relational schema diagram, when you dive into each single attributes, then you just define those things one by one. The only complicated thing is about the foreign key, and we already discussed about that. You basically create all the tables first and then separate in a separate part, indicating you want to do the alter table, add the foreign keys onto the code. So basically, you can see this is how we will be able to do. Once the table has been created, there are several things that you can do. You can describe it. You can take a look of the table descriptions, and I believe all of you guys have done this already. So you can use the describe table to look at the table. You can make some modifications. In the foreign key example we talk about, we can add a constraint to an existing table. We can actually do a lot of different things by using the alter table, and we have several slides to take a look of that one by one. Alter table, table name. So it's the same thing with adding a constraint, but this slide was talking about add a new column. So you will say, I will need one more attribute for the table. So you can say alter table, table name, and then add column name, data type. So you can see in the example, alter table student, and you can add a social security number with CHAR parenthesis 9, indicating that this is the additional attribute I want to add to the existing table. Of course, well, if this code is successfully executed, you will see a table alter sign indicating that you have finished the code and table has been executed. You see the semicolon over here. This is a very, very important sign. If you don't put a semicolon and you hit enter, it will go to next line. So you will see a 3 and a cursor is blinking over there, indicating I am waiting for you to put a semicolon so I know you have done your code. So that's something you really need to remember. When you see a number in front of a cursor and its cursor is keep blinking over there, that gives you a very good hint that Oracle need you to put in a semicolon and an enter. We can modify an existing table's attribute. So you can see that alter table still the same thing. Talk about which table that you want to look into. Modify indicating you want to change something. Column name indicating that which attribute that you are looking at, which column you are looking at, and you can redefine that. So you can see in here it has a varchar 2 parenthesis 11. In this case, it indicates that instead of just 9 numbers, I want to including the dash in your social security number for you to input. So that's something that you can see. So you can change the social security number into a different data type with the different size. We can add a constraint, and whatever constraint we have discussed today can be applicable in this case, so that you will be able to add a foreign key. You can add probably non-null. Non-null need to only define at the column level. You can do the unique. You can do the check over here. So this is something that we already discussed. Alter table, table name, and then you can add some constraints. The most frequently used one is the foreign key addition. We can drop a table. So we already see we can drop a column first of all instead of a table. We can drop a column using the same thing, alter table, table name, drop column as the reserved word, and then talk about which column that you want to drop. So that's also something that we know. Dropping a table. The general syntax of the dropping table is going to be the things that we have been seen several times. Drop table with a table name, then you can simply drop a table. However, if that table has some foreign keys and be referenced, be linked, then you need to use the cascade constraint in back of it to give it a very strong indications that I want to break all of those foreign keys. And therefore, to execute the code, we see this slides already. You need to connect to the Oracle by using connect system, type in your password, and then what I usually do is I create a temp folder under C. So now I know exactly the path of that. I'm creating a Word document over there and then save it as .sql. So if I save it as test.sql to execute the code, you can see simply put an @ sign, put which drive that you saved, which folder, and what is the file name. Make sure it is end with the SQL. So once you're able to do that, you should be able to execute a code. At this stage, you should be able to execute several codes already. So to conclude today's class, I want you guys to do a little bit more exercise. Again, this is an exercise. You don't need to submit anything for this part. I want you guys to create the whole company database in Oracle. Before this video, you should have the first three already. So what I want you guys to do is continue, develop the next three tables, form all the foreign keys successfully. And once you have this exercise down, you can continue work on your project number 3. It will be a very helpful practice for you to do.